everyone. Welcome back to the Living Generationally podcast. I'm your host, Brianna Laurie, and thank you for joining in for another podcast episode. And if you're new here and you have no idea what Living Generationally is, I want to share about it with you. Living Generationally is a place where we get to explore how our everyday choices ripple through our lives, and the lives of those who come after us. This is where purpose begins, where gratitude grows, and where accountability leads to legacy. And I am excited for today's podcast episode. I want to keep it like lighthearted and funny because I feel like um with a specific podcast topic, it can get rather boring and people would be like, well, I don't want to listen to that. I'm just going to exit out. But I do believe it's a conversation that we should have and something that we should process through and to think about because it can impact our relationships. Um, Within marriage and future, like if you're single, future marriage, and just your children and those around you. So I think this is a really good topic to talk about and something I'm also processing in my own life. A lot of topics I want to bring up with the podcast is either something I'm processing, the Lord is teaching me, or something that I want to grow in. I want it to be something that it challenges me also, because even when I do like when I prepare for the podcast episode, like I am so challenged by the information I learn. So I'm like, Lord, like I want to grow in this. I want to be stretched in this because I don't want to just make a podcast episode and just share information. And I think it's helpful for those who do that, but I think it's also very powerful to not only just make a podcast where you're sharing information, but actually implementing that advice in your own life. And I think it just creates um this more authentic and real sense of like community and growing and being stretched. And that's kind of the idea of living generationally. It's not only wanting to grow and wanting to do these amazing things that the Lord may have put on your heart, or the legacies that He's put on your heart and your family. It's also like the everyday minuscule changes that we're making within the systems in our family, and creating different systems that would help us reach those goals. But those are everyday habits that we are growing in. That's why living generationally in this podcast is referring back to the importance of how our everyday choices ripple through our lives, because it is the everyday moments that culminate into um, a legacy, and where we get to pass down onto the next generation and invite community into that as well too. And I want no, I think I would love for living generationally to be a community where we're going together and we are just diving deep into the messy areas of our lives, and examining areas where we know we can grow, and when the Lord is calling us to more accountability and wanting us to be more diligent in. So yeah, and you may be wondering, like, Brianna, like, just get to the topic of the podcast. Okay, I will. So the topic of today's podcast is financial advice we all need but don't want to accept. And this podcast episode, or the thoughts from this podcast, actually came from another podcast I was listening to that was so good. I was just kind of talking about ways to make money in this economy, because one of the common things that we hear is just the struggles that people are facing, which are real. I don't want to act like they aren't real. They are very much real. But I also loved how in that podcast, it also talked about the practical accountability that we can take. Even though this economy may be a struggle, um, we have accountability in our own lives to do certain things, even if it may take waiting, it may take long. We can still take accountability and trust that the Lord sees our efforts and He will honor them. And that was so encouraging to me and helpful, because we can hear all uh, the different perspectives, and I think they're valuable. But sometimes, like, all the bad kind of news per se can kind of get us very sad and depressed and very hopeless. And I hope that this podcast doesn't do that. I hope it actually gives you hope that your current situation actually isn't what has to be carried on into the future. It may be something that the Lord is using it to grow you and stretch you, but also to teach you some accountability and diligence. And that's something I'm also learning is the importance of not just reading God's word and reading these books that we're reading and hearing the advice, but actually to put it into action. That's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. The knowledge is the accumulation of facts. We can know what we ought to do, but not do it. Wisdom is actually taking the knowledge that we know and what we ought to do and actually putting that into action and showing that we actually believe what we say and not just say what we believe. And that has been something that the Lord is really challenging me in a season of life where I'm desiring so many different things, and it's not enough just to desire something. Um, you also, excuse me, have to put in the action and put in the work, and it's going to be hard. It's going to be waiting. It's going to take waiting, but I'm also learning just how to be consistent and all that as well too. And I'm just hoping that this podcast episode gives you hope for your financial future. And I do have a background in finance. I went to school for finance. I'm not an expert. I'm still learning and growing, and the Lord is teaching me so much. And I hope there's so much room for me to continue growing. I never want to, um, like, it's not wrong to be an expert in something, but I never want to stop learning. And not to say I'm an expert in finance. I'm growing a lot, but I think my background and majoring in finance in school just gave me a lot of information and things that the Lord is teaching me. But a lot of the advice I'm sharing is practical, but also like a fundamental foundational principles of how you can examine your own life and beliefs that you're believing. Because there's one thing of learning the practical of finance, but we can learn the practicalities, but it can be such a disconnect because we are still having different beliefs about finances, about ourselves, about maybe something from our past or our upbringing that we're taking into the present that's making it harder to move forward. Or we're just discouraged by current circumstances that is just hard to see a way forward. So all that, I just want to actually get into it. But something first I want to start with is um, so I'm reading the book Atomic Habits, and it's so good, and it's just having me process and think so much. I'm like, Lord, like it just reminds me how much important it is to read scripture because a lot of these self help books I feel like it just regurgitates a lot what scripture talks about. Just if you read through Proverbs and the practical wisdom that Proverbs has, you're just like, Lord, why am I not like it's not new revelation, but it's like, Lord, why am I not applying these things to my life? But I have some points that I want to go through, and then with each of those points, Lord willing, I can offer practical advice to my own self and how I can grow, but also to invite you into this process as well too. So some different points is your identity, your habits, goals, systems, and outcome. So your identity would be your behaviors or your beliefs. Your habits would be a habitual practice routinely repeated without thinking, something that's like automatic. You just do it without even thinking, like I mentioned. And then your goals are more of your direction. And we're also going to talk more about the difference between goals and systems because a lot of us have goals, but we don't know how to actually take actionable steps in the everyday to actually achieve those goals and something I'm learning the difference of. But then also like systems, which is like our actionable steps that helps with the long-term success. Um, and also outcome, which is our results. And I wanted to put it like that because I feel like sometimes in financial videos, which are they're helpful, but it kind of just says like do this and you get this outcome, which is I guess is okay. It's not wrong, nothing wrong with that in of itself. But there's something to be said to dive in deep in the different beliefs that we have about finances and how we can actually move forward and not stay stuck. So for the first point is your identity, which is your behaviors and your beliefs, something that Atomic Habits talk about. And I'm kind of going to be referring a lot to that book because it kind of helped me form the different points I'm making in this podcast episode. But something that Atomic Habits talks about is that our identity is made up a lot of is made up of our beliefs, what we believe about ourselves or what others have believed about ourselves and that we have adapted, or our behaviors or our experiences. And when I first read that, I was shocked by it because I'm like, that's actually pretty true. But first I want to ask you, like, what are you believing about things about when it comes to money? What are you believing about like, or maybe you grew up and you saw your parents struggling, and and that shaped your view of money or finances, or someone else's experience shaped your view of money or finances. And I just want you to think about that, because I think that gives us an opportunity to see where we're kind of getting some of our financial behaviors from. Is it from um just our own habits that we've picked up, or is it something that was learned from our childhood, or being in an environment where maybe money wasn't stewarded that well, or where it was a scarce thing, and maybe that can show more of our habits, whether you're a saver or you're a spender. um, and getting to the root of that kind of helps us more in why we do the things that we do, and help us to, if you're someone who spends a lot of money, it helps you to know why you spend so much money. And if you're someone who saves a lot, which is a good thing, it's like, okay, like, am I saving because I a fear of scarcity, or am I saving because I have these different goals? And you can use wisdom, because you want to have an emergency fund, because that's a really good thing to do, especially because life happens, we all know that, and it is good to just have money set aside for those events when they could potentially happen, and just using wisdom in that. But I think the first piece of advice is just acknowledging what is your behavior towards money or your finances. Are you a spender? Are you a saver? Are you someone who um, idolizes money because you didn't have a lot of it, or you're someone who idolizes money because maybe you did have a lot of it? It's like it's interesting how we can go in two different extremes. Even like, you can idolize it, but in different ways. And it's actually interesting. And something also I want to point out is it's not wrong to make money. It's a good tool that we can use to help advance the kingdom of God. It can be a good tool to, if you have that generational legacy mindset, to give an inheritance to your children and your children and your grandchildren. Or to advance the different goals and desires that the Lord has placed on you and your family's heart. I think it's an amazing tool, and I think sometimes, whether in the world or even Christian circles, like, um, we can either go to the extreme of idolizing money, or I don't know, I see this a lot in Christian circles, like, kind of more like idolizing the idea of being poor, and that sounds odd, but I'm telling you, it's an ideology that's out there, and I truly believe, and I've even adopted some of that, and I'm like, Lord, why am I believing that? Like, yes, um, I don't want to idolize money, and even in Scripture, we see that riches in of itself isn't bad, and we can talk about the scriptures that warned against having money. But it doesn't say that money in of itself is bad. It's more the behaviors um, and more of the hastiness, or the idolization of money, that is not good, and putting your faith and trust in it. But there's this belief I'm telling you, that's running through Christian circles, this idea that, like, poverty is like what the Lord is expecting of us, and I just don't believe that. And um yeah, I just don't believe that, and I think it's important to um kind of go through and realize, what are you believing about money, and start changing your mindset and asking the Lord for help in that as well too. And even ways, this is kind of going into the habits that you have. And I think from our identity we get our habits. um if you're someone that's spending a lot of money, why are you spending so much money? Are you um having poor financial habits where you're spending more than what you make, and you have no idea what you're spending your money on? You're just swiping your credit card and then just racking up interest in on that. or if you're someone who saves a lot of money, which is a good thing, but maybe you don't want to spend any money on anything, that you're not actually being generous in the things that the Lord has given you. And I think that needs to be watched out, because you're like, oh, I'm a saver, but then it's like you're not generous with the resources that the Lord has given you. And that is something that I'm constantly challenged with, because that's something I struggle with. I struggle, like, I wouldn't say, I don't think I spend a lot of money. I can, but I don't think that is, I'm okay, I don't have a lot of money to spend. I'm a young adult. I'm 23, figuring this all out. But but something I realized, I am more of a saver, where, but it's more from like a scarcity mindset, and more of like, or I am in fear, like that I would never have money again. And like I said, it's not bad to save, but the beliefs driving why we're saving can also be detrimental, because then you can be someone who doesn't want to give of the Lord's resources, especially if you're a Christian. Um, like, I believe, and we should believe, that everything that we've been given is given to us by the Lord, and the Lord expects us to be generous, but also steward in the way that we're being fruitful and we're multiplying, but we're also recognizing that it's the Lord's at the end of the day, and He's given us the opportunity to steward it. And some kind of practical advice, if you're someone who has poor financial habits and you're struggling, something I would advise is recognizing, like, if you're someone who's spending more than what you make, maybe go through your bank statements and realize, okay, are there any subscriptions that money is just being taken out of my account each month for something I'm not even using anymore. I know that's something that people get caught up in, and their money just goes out of their account, and they're like, wait, I don't even use this anymore. And I think that's something to look into, and to recognize, like, hey, like, a little $10 and $20 that racks up. It is not something in the beginning. It's like, oh, it's not that much, but it's a lot of money that gets taken out of your account over time if you're not being diligent and kind of looking at your bank statements and recognizing what are you spending your money on, and maybe if there's some things that you realize you're not actually using anymore. Something else, if you're struggling with, if you have poor financial habits and you're wanting to grow, is maybe something I'm learning. Maybe you've heard about this. I'm sure many people have heard about this, but those buy now and pay later apps, like, you can easily overspend, and I'm speaking to myself right now, um, because there's moments where I would think I had a certain amount of money in my account, and forget that I had a payment for the buy now and pay later apps. Like, I don't use it that often, because I'm of the belief that I don't want to spend more than what I make, but sometimes there's something I really want, and then, or yeah, I really want, and then I get distracted. But that can easily lead to overspending, and it sounds like a good idea until you forget that you owe money and you don't have enough money in your account. Um, and another thing to consider is convenience. Convenience will cost you, and maybe you're someone who likes to get their morning coffee from Starbucks, and Starbucks, it's like an arm and a leg, just buy some coffee. I mean, I'm not a coffee person, but I hear it from people. um, and I think something that could help with that is maybe making your coffee at home, maybe finding ways um, to not take the convenient route, but maybe to actually start meal prepping, or just um, creating different routes for you to save money. And I know there are different people in different situations. Um, Maybe you don't have a lot of time, but something I'm realizing is that, like, if you really want something in life, you will set up the different boundaries and structure and discipline in order to get to the goals that you have in life. And something I also realized with the finances and living in this economy. And something like taking a brief pause from what I was sharing, and something that really stuck out to me from the podcast I was listening to is that anyone like can, even though like yes we can say that other generations had it better than us, but there were always people who struggled financially. Like there's always been someone who struggled financially or um didn't have enough to make ends meet. And we see their the stories of them finding different ways, finding different routes. And that would be one of my encouragement, is like shifting your perspective and doing the hard work. Yes, living in this economy is a struggle, but complaining is not gonna get you to where you want to go. And life is hard, and we have to choose to either allow it to happen to us or to get in the ring and to choose to fight and to choose to um, find ways to maybe make extra money and continue to grow in that area. And I want to encourage you in that, because I need that encouragement as a young adult who has all these crazy dreams. They're not crazy, but they can be, they're expensive. But it's like just that reminder that it takes hard work, and comparing your life to someone else's is not going to make you more joyful. And to some people that encourages them, but I know to most people it just makes them bitter and resentful. And I just want to encourage you to um, acknowledge that everyone struggled when they first started out. Everyone has struggled when they first started out. And yes, there are people who have different privileges, and praise the Lord for that. I think sometimes we get so hardened of heart when we hear that people have different privileges. Like we need not to do that. Like, and that's become like a popular thing within our culture to kind of to just attack people who have privileges. It's like hopefully they're using that to glorify and honor the Lord, and not everyone is doing that. But just because someone has a privilege doesn't mean they're a bad person. Like their family generationally has paid the cost of wanting to get their child or their grandchildren to that place. And instead of being jealous, we should take advice and learn and grow, instead of being people who are bitter and just constantly complaining. And something I'm also realizing and growing in is like, yes, the struggle is real. But struggle, like I mentioned before, is not unique to our generation, and the victim mindset will not help you. Um, yes, if you have wonderful parents who can help you, and not to say that your parents aren't wonderful if they can't help you, but if you have parents who can help you, that is a blessing, not something that you're entitled to. And that's something I'm also learning, that we can easily gain hearts of like, I'm owed this, I'm owed that, I'm owed this, I'm owed that. And it's like, if your parents work hard to give you a blessing, it is because they recognize the value of setting you up for success, not because you're entitled to it. And I think we can walk around with these attitudes of entitlement, recognizing that, like, yes, our, maybe the previous generation within our family didn't choose the best decisions, but staying in a state of bitterness and resentment isn't going to change anything. You can recognize, like, okay, maybe this wasn't the best choices that they make, but how can I move forward? And it takes growing. And I'm saying this, I know from me speaking, like, it can sound like I am learning these things with you. Like, the Lord knows the moments I've struggled and I've cried. I'm learning so much and I'm growing so much, and it's hard, but at the same time, it's growing in the direction that I want to grow in, and I also want you to grow in, and I'm with you in this, and I'm learning and growing as well too. Um, and going back to the convenience point, um, something I'm also growing in, and kind of, this is not everyone's, I guess, desire when having a generational perspective, but something that I'm learning to value is the value of the home economy, and seeing and becoming more of a producer than a consumer. And I think when you shift this perspective, also in identity as well too, a lot of these things go back to identity, because what we're rooting our identity in often becomes manifested in our actions, and our actions repeated time and time again become our habits. And that also becomes a part of our identity. So it's kind of like this circle. But I think when you have this perspective of valuing the home economy and how you can see it as a production rather than where you're constantly consuming, it changes your perspective of the convenience aspect, and something that I'm still growing in and being stretched in. But it's like you realize that um, when you shift your perspective, you shift your perspective and your value system to one of where you're actually producing and not consuming, begins to change your worldview, but also the way that you live and your spending habits and your financial habits. You begin to realize how important your resources are, and you begin wanting to make different decisions. And that's a mindset shift that we need to make. And it's something that we don't always want to accept, because it's easy to say stuck in these victim mindsets and kind of just, and like I said, the hard thing is like a lot of these things are valid, like people are struggling, but there's a difference between recognizing the struggle and continuing to make that 1% progress forward. It is the other side where you're recognizing the struggle and you aren't doing anything. And that's the difference. And I do believe that shifting our perspective and not staying stuck in thinking like, okay, the economy did this to me, this did this to me, this did this to me. It's like, oh, like, yes, the economy isn't perfect, but how can I change what I'm doing to kind of set myself and my family up for the future? What are maybe the things I don't want to do that needs to be changed in order for the trajectory of our lives to look different? Um, yeah, and this can also look like your health as well too. And you may be wondering, like, Brianna, these aren't actually like financial, like, and go invest and do that. Like, that's helpful and practical. But I feel like a lot of the things are just so basic that if we free up and change our mindset on these certain things, it can save us so much money in the long term. And even taking care of your health. Like, I was reading something, it's like medical expenses, like healthcare is one of the leading causes of bankruptcy. Or I don't know if it is a leading cause of bankruptcy or is one of the leading causes of bankruptcy. I'm not too sure. But, and I know there's people with different situations and backgrounds, and maybe they were born with something or something that's out of their control. I'm not talking about the things that are out of our control. I'm talking about the things that are within our control, where we can change our habits um, to actually be more healthy individuals, and so that we can show up for the people in our life. And the reason why it's not all just about finances, because I don't know if you're beginning to see like this trend that I'm kind of bringing along. It's like it's more deeper than our finances. It is our underlying worldview of how we're viewing things. And something that Atomic Habits talk about that is so good is that oftentimes we want to change the outcome. We start with the outcome, and that is not a good place to start, because we start with the outcome and it's not long term, it's short term gain and short term improvement. But when you start with the underlying identity of what am I believing? What is my worldview? What is my behaviors? What are the experiences that have may have accumulated to why I'm believing what I'm believing? Then you begin to get the root at, oh, like the root, like I need to change what I'm believing in order to help with these different goals that I have in mind. And it's so powerful. You got to read the book Atomic Habits. I'm reading through it right now, and it's like so good. And um something else, now shifting to like what are the good habits you want to create, um is maybe learning how to do some of the things on your own to help you save money. But it's also a new skill that you have learned. There's something valuable in doing something on your own and realizing that, oh, like I can do this, I can serve my family in this way. And it's not a bad thing to get people who are talented in that area to help. I'm not saying that. I'm not going on the record for that. But if you're not someone who has the financial capabilities to do those things, um, learn a new skill. Learn as you go, and something I'm learning as well too, and being stretched in. And it's like something that you could kind of like navigate is like, what are the things that like I really want to outsource and I'm not that gifted in, and what are the things that maybe you can actually grow in, and maybe you can make on your own. I think that's a good place like to start in valuing the home economy and seeing the value that it offers is recognizing what areas maybe you want to outsource and what are some things that you can actually make or something you can build on your own and building skill in that way. And that's something that I'm growing in, and I want to continue to step into and learn as well too. Um, and there's another good habit that to cultivate is learning to be resourceful and saving money, and this kind of ties into the first point. Building a skill that can help save money as well too, or shifting your perspective on the value of the home and that as well too. But you may ask, like Brianna, like I've done all these things, but yet there's still a lot of struggle. And something else is finding ways to be fruitful and multiply your money as well too. And I know for some people that's investing, um, which I know just people have different perspectives on that. I feel like I'm still learning and growing that. And I learned a lot about investing in school since I study finance, but I feel like I'm still wrestling with it. I don't think it's bad, but I am wrestling with it. Um, but that is something that you can do is um, investing, looking for ways to invest your money um, to because yeah, something that we you learn a lot in school in finance is compound interest, and you can people say a lot within the finance world. Compound interest is a tool that can help make your money to be fruitful and to multiply it. And a long term perspective, whether you're someone planning for different events in life, that can be a very useful and fruitful tool, and something I definitely want to look more into and grow in as well too. Um, yeah, and I'm sure there's other good habits to be done as well too, but those are some of the things that I kind of had thought off the top of my head, or just kind of looking in to see areas that I'm growing in and want to grow in as well too. And if you have any other things to add, I would love to hear down in the comment section below. And this is a good place to like stop and pause and say, um, if you're new here or if you've been a part of the Living Generationally community, I would love to hear like how is this like your thoughts on today's podcast episode. But if you're new here, I would very much appreciate if you hit the subscribe button. It helps this channel to grow and get and um and allow more people to listen in. And also leave a comment or a rating or review. That's also helps the podcast as well too. Um, yeah, and something else that I want to talk about is goals. Having goals, and Atomic Habits talks about this, is like having goals is not enough because goals set direction, but they it doesn't give you actionable steps, like I mentioned before. And so I don't think is necessarily wrong to have like maybe financial goals in mind that you have, but I think you just can't stop there. Um, because sometimes we can reach a goal and not actually have those practices be a part of our life. Maybe you're someone who's like, okay, by this time I'm going to save this amount of money. And maybe after that goal, you just stop saving. And it's like, no, you want to continue that habit of saving. And that is the importance of creating systems, because systems are actions that help with for long-term success and not just short-term success. And systems can tie into your values, your beliefs, your mission, and your vision that kind of sets up daily habits that you want to help you head into the direction that you and your family desire. Or even if you're a single person like me and you're growing in this as well too, and you have a desire for marriage and just creating different values and beliefs and missions and visions, like for maybe that's that current season of life. And when you get married, you can refine it with um, your husband if you're a woman, and your wife if you're a man. um, yeah, so what are some of the financial goals you have in mind? What are things that you want to reach, and trying to get it like an estimate of maybe how much would it cost, and just having that long term perspective, or short term depending on your, or short term goal depending on what you're trying to reach, but realizing that you don't want to just have that those actions as a part of like something that's short term or long term. I really hope that makes sense and I'm not like confusing you. um but that is something that I want to encourage you in, and financial advice is seeking the long-term success rather than the short-term gratification. And this is something that I'm learning as well too, as I'm saving. And right now it's more in a smaller amount because I'm looking for work, and it's been a bit challenging, which is okay. I'm reminding myself that in the beginning it's hard to start out. Everyone struggles starting out, depending on their background. Not everyone, but most people struggle starting out, and it's just a part of life. um, but I'm learning to keep going. But I'm still having that principle of wanting to save and learning different habits and different things to help me as well too. But something I'm learning is the importance of having that long-term perspective, and the long-term perspective and success helps so much, especially in those moments where it is hard and you can't see the way forward. Having those systems and those values and those missions and beliefs helps drive you when you have no motivation, or no, like you're just empty, and you're just like, I'm just trying to get to the next day, the next step. And um the Lord is teaching me the value of waiting and the importance of waiting on Him, but also taking action and control in the areas that we can and that He's giving us authority over, because we do have a will, and the Lord expects us to steward the things that He's given us wisely, like I mentioned before. But there's something to be said about doing that while you wait, because it shows that you trust the Lord, that you're waiting on Him, but you also have faith behind that waiting, to something to show for. And I think this current generation needs to be taught the importance of delayed gratification, because everything is convenient. Everything is gimme, 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 gimme. I'm entitled to this. I want this. I want that. Give me this. I expect this. If I don't have this, blah 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 blah. At you, and I see it in myself. Like the Lord is, He's working on me because I've seen it in myself. And it's so important just to realize the value of having to work towards something, because it teaches you it teaches you humility, patience, and to truly value what you're building. Because when you when there's hastiness, and um, I believe that can create a lack of a true appreciation over the things that took a lot of time to build. And something else, Scripture talks about this a lot in Proverbs, is that hastiness makes one poor, but diligence and patience worketh great profit. And I truly believe that. And there are those who are hasty to get rich, and you see that they use their money in very poor ways, and they don't really use wisdom in that. And they say they will, but they don't. But those who have like this patience and this diligence mindset and continue to working hard, they realize the hard work that was put behind those years behind the scenes when no one saw, that got them to the point that they are now. And that is important to internalize and recognize that, having that long-term perspective rather than short-term gratification can help you a lot in humbling you and creating a spirit of diligence and patience. um yeah, and yeah, kind of going, summing up the systems part. Creating systems allows you to cultivate those good habits over a long period of time, keeping the bad habits away. And it's not to say that you are going to be perfect, but it allows you to have a metric system that allows you to recognize, okay, where are we in our and not heading into the direction of the missions and visions and goals that we have. Where are we? Are we on the right path? Did we get a little sidetracked? How can we make different changes and shifts? Something that I'm realizing is really important. And something I also want to talk about, like with creating systems, is cultivating a generational mindset. And you're just going to hear me just repeat this over and over again in different podcast episodes, because that's the heart of living generationally, is living with a generational mindset. And no matter how old you are, you can start now. I'm 23 years old, and the Lord has been renewing my mind about this idea of generational legacy. And I think it's actually something that's becoming more popular within, like, kind of like people are starting to think about it now. It's like more of a trend, per se. Or maybe I'm in my more, maybe it's not, and I'm maybe more the smaller circles of podcasts I'm listening to that they're talking about. But the idea of generational legacy is not new. Like, it's a concept that people have lived with all throughout history, because they realize the value of setting the next generation up so that they can succeed. And I think having a generational mindset when you're cultivating different things helps so much, because you realize that, oh, look, I am not, like, yes, like, I'm not that important. Like, I want to value my life, and I don't want to be go crazy and be foolish, but my life has a timeline, and the Lord knows that, when that moment is. But I want to live in such a way where um, I'm living with that mindset of the next generation. And um, yeah, and I think it's important when we're creating these systems and these long term desires, that we actually live in such a way that actually represents that. Because, like I said in the beginning, we can say what we believe, but it's a different, or yeah, we can say what we believe, but it's different when you actually start acting on what you believe. Um, yeah, and there's different tools that can help you with achieving um, your different financial goals. And I was listening. Um, yeah, it's gonna keep saying I was listening to this podcast, but it was there's different financial apps that maybe you know of that can help you with budgeting, um, saving, investing. And I would encourage you to look into that stuff if that's something that you're interested in and you value. And yeah, some other like extra encouragement I kind of have, that I've been like processing and learning, is that slow progress is still progress. Growing 1% is still something, versus not growing, or just kind of declining and no longer caring about the direction that you're heading off in. Another one, it was like, get off of social media and you will save tons of money. I said, thank me later. And everyone has their own perspective of social media. I have YouTube, but I don't have like any other social media platforms, because it's just a big trap, a money trap of yeah, I believe a lot of people get caught up in just spending money without even thinking. Um yeah. And I think I mentioned this, but if you can partner with your family and those around you, that's a good way to help one another. And that's something I'm growing in. And I know everyone's family background is different, and you want to use wisdom. Um, because I feel like I'm in that situation where I'm like, Lord, I need more prayer and guidance, and with regards to my family, just having different values and perspectives and on different things. So I'm more cautious. I feel like I have a lot of caution in that area. Um, yeah, but if that maybe works in your family, you can partner with your family. And um, yeah, and also um yeah, even if you are doing all the right things, I want to encourage you to keep going. Yes, it is going to be hard, but you're stronger and more courageous than you think. And that's been something that's encouraging me as well too. Is that like these hardships are a part of life, but they don't have to determine my life. um, Luxuries are not a given, and they aren't a need. Choose what you can give up, whether it be for a season or for a lifetime. Entitlement will breed discontentment. Um, Hard decisions mature you, but they pay off later. That's a good one. Um, and also, like, you will make mistakes, but they can be lessons. But the wisdom comes from not repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And something that I feel like maybe I may get pushed back on this. I don't know, but there's like this belief going around that somehow like debt in of itself is a wealth building tool, and it's not. And I will go on a record for that, for saying that. And yes, I went to school in finance. I learned, but debt is not a wealth building tool. And I think many people are believing that debt is somehow this wealth building tool. Um, and it's not. There's a lot of risk when it comes to building up debt and not having any sort of plan and what you're doing. And people would say, well, like, oh, that can create assets and stuff like that, but you still have to pay back that money. Like, for example, if a company were to go bankrupt, all their assets will be liquidated to pay off the debt that they owe. Debt is still a real thing, and I think like somehow like we're believing that debt, and it's not biblical either. um Not to say that maybe you have a mortgage. I'm not saying like yes, you want to have wisdom in paying that off, and there's different perspectives on that too. um and building a business and stuff like that, but do not see debt in of itself as a wealth building tool. Like, if you can wait and build the resources, just do that. And I know that's hard, and you'd be like, you don't even know anything, you're 23 years old, and maybe I don't, but I think that's not the wisest thing to play with. And it's for like, and that's it. TikTok socialists are encouraging people to do this, and I don't think it's wise. Um, and I said I don't want to tell you, but just delete social media. Um, yeah, and those are just kind of the things I wanted to share. And maybe you don't agree with all of them. That's okay. Those are some things that I'm learning and kind of growing in. Um, yeah, and just wanted to share. Thought it'd be helpful. Financial advice we all need, but don't want to accept. And this is more on the longer side of a podcast, but I hope that it was somewhat encouraging. And I would love to hear your comments in the comment section below. And yeah, that is the end of today's podcast episode. And I hope you have a good one. And until next time, live with legacy leading to the future. Goodbye, friends.